and then ends in section, 80 or 90, with essentially a précis of the Theodicy, right? We live in this world governed by a just God in which we can increase in perfection to the extent that we understand reality and come to love God, right? That's just the position of the Theodicy. So clearly there's, I think, a deep, deep connection between the Theodicy as a project and the Monadology as a project. And that was really, I think, the standpoint from which I was starting in my book. The other point I wanted to make, though, is that to really understand the systematic unity of Leibniz's thought, I think you have to bring the practical dimension of it into this. And that's something, I think Maria Rosa is very good on this in her biography. From the very beginning of his career, Leibniz is concerned with this project of establishing the justice of God as the creator and governor of reality, right? That's the first point. Second, that we can come more and more to understand that intention that God has in creation of the world and the order and harmony that's present in the world itself. All of Leibniz's intellectual projects are contributions to that. You know, the sort of the theoretical work, the work in science, and even some work in geology, right? Everything contributes to that one goal. If there's anyone whose thought is unified, it's Leibniz's thought. So there.
Okay, I apologize for being something of a moving target. I don't think, first of all, let me quote something Jeff said that I think is a very nice way of putting my point. I suspect that it tracks. Right, I hasten to think that I don't think that this is a trivial result. This is referring to what it is that I was trying to argue in the essay. I suspect that it tracks Leibniz's hope that his general strategies for responding to the problems of moral and physical evil might be acceptable to those ignorant of or even opposed to his metaphysical atomism. And I think that this is an important feature of the Theodicy. He doesn't want, it is an exoteric work, but he also doesn't want, he wants the solution to the problem of evil, or the solutions to the different problems of evil that he's dealing with in the work, to be understandable independently of the particular metaphysical foundation that he wants to give to the world. And that, I think, is a very important observation to make. That the solutions to the problems of evil that he's offering and the theological doctrines, he wants to be acceptable to people who are coming to it with a lot of different presuppositions. Which is to say, this is what I think about, Leibniz is saying, this is what I may think about the ultimate metaphysical foundation, of the world. But at the same time, we can all agree on these ways of understanding these problems that come up with respect to God and the world. And I think that that's part of why it is that the metaphysical stuff is just not all, why he doesn't think that it's altogether relevant to the project of the Theodicy. Now, in a certain sense, yeah, obviously Leibniz is unified in this very, very general way by wanting to see sort of order and beauty of the world. But at the same time, I want to call attention to the wide variety of things that Leibniz is interested in. The empirical studies of history, the empirical studies of natural history, alchemy, medicine, the work in geology. I would love for you to be able to show me where in the geological work that I've spent a fair amount of time with, you can see reflections of some of these larger metaphysical issues. But after coming to it with the hope of being able to find them there, I think Leibniz was just really, really interested in how it is that what appear to be the remains of shells came to be at the tops of mountains. and things like that. I think it may be, Leibniz certainly will say things like what it is that you said about how everything I do is to show the order and beauty of things in the world. Everybody says sort of large programmatic things of that sort from time to time. And I think that there are a couple of places where I can show you where Leibniz says large programmatic things that are different than that on different occasions. And while sometimes I'm sure he really believed that, I think when you say, now really Leibniz, what about the distinction between these different kinds of languages? Does that really, is this really a demonstration of that? What about your work over here? Is this really a demonstration? Well, maybe not everything. I think he does say large programmatic things like that, but maybe we shouldn't put all of our weight on those.
We have about 6 questions and we have about 6 minutes, so economy is good.
Justin Smith, Concordia University, Montreal. Just a quick comment about the geology. To my mind, the geology contains the paleontology, and the theory of fossils is a wonderful application of the theory of the organic structure of all of nature, which I take to be central to at least one side of Leibniz's philosophy. So that's just a comment. My actual comment, it concerns something, I don't know if this is necessarily the right forum to hammer out differences about the fate of corporeal substance in the late metaphysics, but this idea that you argued for, that the monadological metaphysics is simply not relevant to the Theodician project, and that's why we don't find it. I wanted to suggest that that there's some good textual evidence in the Theodicy that the corporeal substance metaphysics remains relevant and indeed integrated into the Theodician project. And I just wanted to cite this very interesting passage. I'll try to be brief. It's at the end of section 124. I have to translate from the Flammarion edition. He explicitly says that this is why in my philosophy there is no rational creature without some organic body, and there is no created mind that is entirely detached from body. Then he goes on to say, towards the end of the paragraph, that that the differences between the degrees of perfection of bodies is directly the same as the difference between the degrees of perfection of minds. And then he goes on to say that this has to be the case, otherwise this wouldn't have been the best of all possible worlds. So it seems to me that that the preponderance of passages like this that suggest some kind of enduring commitment to the attachment of minds to organic bodies and the direct effort to tie this in to the account of this as the best of all possible worlds and degrees of perfection in bodies strongly suggests that this is not quite an expression of what you see as the monadological metaphysics that will be expressed 4 years later. So that's.
I'm not sure how that relates exactly to the points, but yeah, I mean the things. I mean he certainly does think that every soul has a body, and that's something he holds all the way through, and he certainly never gets rid of that. At some point or another, though, he does introduce monads,
Yeah.
and at this point, in 1710, he certainly does have monads, even if he's not talking about them there. I don't want to deny that. I don't want to deny that the corporeal substance view just simply disappears.
Right.
It's really there. And you're right. I mean, as far as the get to the just a word about the geology thing. Sure. Certainly, the views of organisms do enter in, but the paleontological stuff that he's talking about, say in the geological writings, doesn't really depend. Well, there was the argument that the apparent remains of shells are really the remains of organisms that had existed at some time in the past. There's certainly an argument for that. I don't see it depending in a strong way, though, on the details of his biological view. But we can, I mean, that's a long conversation.
Just very briefly, it's that he wants to argue that the organic remains show that these are the organic bodies of originally living beings,
right,
rather than of
absolutely
of artifice, right? And
absolutely,
that leads him into Proto-Gaia to go into some detail about the, you could say, the metaphysical distinction between artifice and generated natural beings. But I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Sok Lee at Seoul National University. I also want to return to the systematicity question, and I was thinking that of the two analogies that of the net and of the starry heavens, I can see why you were resisting the net analogy, because the net analogy seems to suggest that every node in the net has some direct or indirect connection that has to be explicit. And it seems to be the case that those explicit links aren't there in many of these cases. So I was wondering if there was a way to try to save the net analogy without having to be committed to a kind of explicit connection. And that I was going to propose what you thought about the overarching theme, which I think is in Leibniz's overall endeavors, and that's that of harmony. So that he firmly would have thought that any full account that would have been given of any disparate field of, be it geology or mathematics or history, that a full account of what's going on in this world would be able to be explained by the grand theme of harmony, even though he might fail in reaching that ideal.
I don't know. I mean, that's that, and that may be more what it is that Don has in mind. Harmony. What do you think of harmony?
Thank you. Well, I take the view, as I have expounded that in the biography, that broadly speaking, in Leibniz thought, everything is connected to everything, but that should not be intended in a simplistic way, as if we can make a sort of Cartesian or Spinoza deductive system. Or that we can deduce somehow geological principles from the monadology. What I mean, first of all, is that Leibniz thought is not simply is philosophical thought. And I think that is very important, because there are some overarching projects. I think to have identified one overarching project, which is part of his is guiding overarching project, which connects his intellectual and his practical endeavors, and this is this encyclopedic development of and reform of all the sciences, which for him is in view of the improvement of the human condition, and in so doing, a celebration of the glory of God in his creation. I think this takes in pretty much everything. So the geology goes also in this project, and is connected to everything else, because it's part of this encyclopedic scientific development, which is